But what's the weather? How will it affect? The Kentucky Derby is back for another year. The horse racing world takes center stage. Barry Abrams, he's the host of the ESPN In the Gate podcast, and he joins us now to give all of us out there a little bit more insight on what we can expect. Barry, are we expecting a muddy track tomorrow down there at the Derby?
Oh, yeah, Mike Gillis, but far too long since you and I have been doing this. Yes, it is going to be a pretty wet couple of days. And, you know, even though Churchill Downs is a terrific track for drying out, it has very good drainage, they're going to be inundated with rain, or so it seems. And so the races that have happened on the dirt there so far, it's been a lot of front runners, which is not what I would have expected. So that means you got to take a look at horses like State of Honor and Always Dreaming, horses who are going to be near the front.
How do you think then, you know, the potential rain here has changed the outlook for some of the favorites? Because we know when the track is a mess like it could be. I mean, if it looks like it does here today here in New Jersey, that is, to me, would change the dynamics for a lot of these horses.
Well, I think you're going to have to go. I mean, you're going to have to break well, and you're going to have to establish position, which in a race with 20 horses is a lot easier said than done. Now, again, there's still a lot of time between now and tomorrow afternoon, and even if they get some breaks of rain, there's some breaks in the rain, again, that track dries out pretty well. But right now the forecast is for pretty consistent rain, and so
70%.
Yeah, and the thing is, there have been so few prep races that have been run in the rain, which last year there were significantly more, that it's hard to tell. Now, far higher minds than I study pedigrees when it comes to how a horse is predicted to run on an off track. And the cognoscenti say that just about all of these horses have pretty decent pedigrees for running in the rain. So it's really kind of a crapshoot. And I think when you handicap, beyond the fact that the horse has to break well and get a good position, I don't know how much more you can factor in when it comes to the weather.
Barry, how much stock do you put into whether the horse is breaking from that main starting gate or the auxiliary gate? Because I know, like Irish Warcry, for example, got the 17 post and his trainer spun right away. Oh, we like that auxiliary gate. Is that just spin, or is there actually an advantage to being on that outside?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of an advantage. I think 5 of the last 6 Derby winners have broken from post 13 or outward. I think you get a clearer path, albeit a longer path, but a clearer path coming out of that auxiliary gate. And so, you know, I don't know how much of a NASCAR fan you are, but you often see drivers in a NASCAR race going high on the track, even though it's the longer way around, because they don't have to turn the steering wheel as much. They don't have to pinch their car and tap on the brake, and they can go wide open. And I think the same thing applies to horse racing here, where, yeah, they have to go the longer way around, but not only do they have the clearer path, but remember, the dirt track is significantly banked, and so the water is going to run off from the middle down towards the two sides. So when you break from that auxiliary gate, you're out in the middle of the track with better footing, and I think that's going to help them too.
What are some of the storylines that are captivating to you? I did see that Bob Baffert's going to watch the race for one of the first times ever from his couch. He won't be there for the actual race. He's in early in the weekend, but won't be there for the actual Kentucky Derby. And then I saw Bodie Miller is a part owner of one of the horses. Of course, you can't talk Kentucky Derby without saying the name Todd Pletcher. There's a horse that only has one eye. I mean, all kinds of compelling storylines down there, Barry. Which ones have caught your eye?
Well, if you're looking for horses to root for, you probably want to start with Gunnevera. His trainer, Antonio Sano, is the leading trainer in the history of Venezuela. The reason he's here right now is not as much because of the Kentucky Derby, but because of the situation in this country. Twice he was kidnapped, and held for ransom that his family paid on 2 different occasions. And he looked at his wife and said, we need to get out of here. If you're looking for somebody to root for, you can start right there. Irish Warcry, you mentioned, his owner Isabel Di Tommaso is an amazing lady. She's 86. In the 1950s, she was a race car driver, a sports car driver in Europe and in the United States. And the name Di Tommaso sounds familiar to you. Her husband, Alejandro Di Tommaso, helped found the Di Tommaso sports car company. They made Maseratis and Eras and, all kinds of great landmark machines, iconic machines. And she is also, you're in New Jersey, her father, Amory Haskell, was the co-founder of Monmouth Park. And the race that is run for 3-year-olds in the summer is named for him. So she is a regally bred lady in multiple forms of horsepower. Also, Irish War Cry's jockey, Rajiv Mirage of Kingston, Jamaica, was involved in a couple of really bad spills in the last couple of years. Big one being in 2015 at Monmouth Park. And for 15 months, he was out of action. He couldn't even bend over to tie his shoes. But he came back, and the trainer, Graham Motion, never lost faith in him and put him on Irish War Cry, and here they are. So if you're looking for a couple of horses to root for, Gunnavera and Irish War Cry would stand out for me.
Barry Abrams with us, ESPN's In the Gate podcast, to get you ready for the first leg of the Triple Crown. And we had a Triple Crown winner, American Pharaoh, a couple of years ago. So was it a different feeling last year that the Triple Crown had been achieved?
Yeah, I mean, I as you know, there's no time like the first time, at least the first time in a while. You never forget your first time. But I think there's a reasonable chance of it happening again because horses nowadays don't usually run more than every 4, 5, or 6 weeks. But remember, the Triple Crown is 2 weeks from the Derby to the Preakness and then 3 weeks from the Preakness to the Belmont. So a lot of the horses in the Derby don't run the Preakness. And in theory, those are the best horses, the ones that run the Derby. Now, of course, the Derby winner is going to run the Preakness for the full of history. So, yes, he'll be a little more tired, but he's also probably running against inferior competition in the Preakness comparatively. So I think there'll be a reasonable chance that in subsequent years you're going to have the Derby winner win the Preakness and arrive in New York with a chance to win. And, well, you just never know what's going to happen then.
Classic Empire, the favorite here, and give us a little insight on why that horse is the favorite and if you think this one could be the one that gets the triple.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. I don't know. You sound like a guy who would have been a fan of the WWE back in the early 2000s when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was their big star. And maybe you remember one of the shticks he used to do. I know this because, A, I watched it, and B, a college buddy used to write their storylines. He would say, "Hey, Mike, what do you think of The Rock's shirt?" And you'd start to answer, and he'd say, "It doesn't matter what you think." And that's pretty much the way Classic Empire is. If he doesn't feel like going out to train, he just won't do it. And if he doesn't feel like racing, he just won't do it. And there was a race last year in Saratoga where he basically threw the rider at the start and said, "I'm done here." And so, talented as he is, he's a 2-year-old champion, and he won his last race, the Arkansas Derby, in scintillating fashion. You just don't know what's going to happen when he walks out in front of 170,000 people. Now, he's trained well at Churchill Downs, but, that's not race day. And so if he doesn't bring his A game, all of what we're saying may be out the window. But he is very, very talented. And if he's on his race, his best is better than their best, but you just never know.
We got McCracken, I think a long shot there. I mean, a dark horse, Taprit, Irish War Cry is another one that you should keep your eye on out there. We've got Always Dreaming's another one that I think out there. So
Always Dreaming is going to be moved up if it rains because he's a front runner. He's probably going to go to the lead, and if it's if the way things are today or the way they are tomorrow with early speed not backing up, and the come from behinders not able to catch them, then you have to think a horse like Always Dreaming, who I would otherwise have considered a complete throwout, would have a chance to win this race for trainer Todd Fletcher, who has had started 45 horses in this race and won it just once in 2010.
Barry Abrams, just if you could, for our listeners who are really interested in tomorrow's race, if you throw out a couple of horses, if they want to head on over to the racetrack here and throw a couple shackles down.
Well, The horse I think is going to win is McCracken. Not that he's a surprise, but he too has had some physical problems. Classic Empire had some back problems early in the year. That's part of what's kept him from consistent efforts. McCracken had an ankle injury, and his trainer, Ian Wilkes, kind of kept the train on the rail, but he brought him along slowly, said, I'm not going to crank him up for the race that he ran in April. Now it's go time, and I think he's going to be sitting on a big effort. If you're looking for horses at a little bit bigger price, I'll give you Gervin at 15-1, who has the services of the best jockey in the country, the ageless 52-year-old Mike Smith, who, by the way, won the Kentucky Derby in 2005 on a 50-1 horse named Giacomo. Gervin's had some foot problems the last couple of weeks. Seems to have trained really well with it, nonetheless. I've seen him train. He's looked perfect. And at 15-1, winner of his last two races, if you're looking for a live long shot, let's go there.
I'm in, PT. We were taking a ride after this?
Sure, you and me, Gervin, 15-1.
Sloppy track in 13, sloppy in 10, sloppy in 9, and probably sloppy in 2017 as well, if everything holds up the way it is right now. The Kentucky Derby tomorrow at Churchill Downs. Barry Abrams. If you want more, check out the In the Gate podcast at ESPN.com. Barry, enjoy the race, pal.
Thanks so much, gentlemen.